Hello, everybody, and welcome to this wonderful and unusual sort of conversation that we're about to have about the wonderful Adlais Echoes exhibition at the Workers' Gallery and the two people who put it together, Lucy Purrington and Tracey Leonard. And it is a little bit unusual because we are doing this in completely different places. We're all in Rhondda and Taff. So potentially we're not breaking any lockdown rules, but we're doing it virtually anyway in our own homes, so we're okay. So one of the things, I went up to see the show actually, and it is a really striking show, fantastic work in there. And of course, the minute I see a show, I always think, why did somebody want to do an exhibition? Because there's a lot of work involved. So can I ask both of you, what was the motivation for doing an exhibition at the Workers?
Do you want me to take this first?
I go for it. Go on, you start.
I think for me, I'm a bit fascinated by the resilience and the gusto of Rhondda people, being one of them. I think 2020 has been a really, really difficult year for the Rhondda, more than most, with some of the stuff we've gone through. And lockdown and COVID has made me hypersensitive of my surroundings and about what's been going on. So starting to document lockdown and what was going on. And I think Lucy and I had conversations, and Chris and Gail, and we were making work separately, but they had a lot of crossover themes. And we just thought now would be a really good time to kind of merge the work and just kind of celebrate the Rhondda in what's been a really difficult year. So we're better than the Workers' Gallery, really, in the valleys, full galleries by two valleys photographers.
And it was odd timing where, for months people were stuck in the area where they are. And for me, it was a nice experience to learn more about where I now live, because I'm not originally from the Rhondda. So I got to see a whole different side on my hour's walk, going around the hills and finding like lovely locations and, meeting a few dog walkers and having the occasional very distanced chat. And in a way, the lockdown really did prompt this. And as Tracey said, we're having conversations about how we could celebrate the Rhondda, because there's been so many horrible things happening that we needed something positive.
Mm-hmm. I think there is a resilience as well in the community, isn't it? It's that that's very strong, and I think it's a good thing to capture these sort of moments in terms of just trying to make sense of what people are going through, how they might be feeling. What does it look like? Okay, that's really interesting. However, I know that putting an exhibition together at the best of times is always difficult, and when we've been sort of in and out of all sorts of restrictions because of the pandemic, how did you manage to, or how did you get around the planning, and how much work did you find was involved in just simply getting it all together, ready to put on walls in the gallery?
I think I can say for both of us, more than we expected, is the short answer. But, we did a lot online. We organised as much as we possibly could online. And that was from, image selection to sequencing. We all, we did that together online so that when we were ready to land in the Workers, we were sort of sorted. We knew exactly what we were doing. So it was a lot more work than we'd anticipated. And I think that's always the case. But it was so enjoyable to do it all. And it was a wonderful distraction from everything in the outside world.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. I mean, I'm just wondering then, Tracey, when in preparation, sort of the editing and everything else, it's a lot of work, So how did you kind of both of you work together then to sort of select images and so on? I mean, was that all that online? Did you ever meet up the mountain somewhere in the fresh air to look at pictures physically, or was it all online?
We managed one face-to-face meeting in between lockdowns. Everything else was done via WhatsApp, emailing, all online. So it was more of a challenge, but I don't think anything's ever impossible. You just need to find a different way around it, and that's what we've been doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think we're all getting better now, aren't we, at working remotely and working digitally. I mean, there's a lot you can do, but at the same time, there's always the unexpected that happens when you then get into a gallery and start to sort of think about things. Did it go to plan, as it were, when you got to the gallery and you were putting it together? Was this how it was always going to be, or did you have to tweak things?
When we got to the gallery, it was fine, but obviously the exhibition was supposed to start 2-3 weeks before it actually opened, because we went into another lockdown, so we had to push back the dates. But it went quite smoothly. I think because we'd done so much prep and we'd had those other couple of weeks to work on it, it was fairly straightforward once we got to the gallery.
Yeah, and working online, it was something very different from what we're used to, because we're used to sort of meeting quite regularly as part of the Rhondda Creative Community Group. Because of the lockdown, we decided to do a lot of activities around the exhibition to try and engage the local communities a bit more, because obviously some people will be shielded and they wouldn't have been able to go down there. So that was a big part of what we were organising as well.
I'm sure we must point people as well at the virtual gallery that you now have, which has come about, or has it? I mean, has that come about because of the recent, the second lockdown, or in your mind, did you always think that was something worth doing anyway?
We thought it was worth doing. Photographs of the gallery is brilliant, but to have that sort of experience of walking through and seeing things side by side and in the same sequencing, I think that's really important to that experience that you get in a gallery.
Yeah, no, I agree. It is very good, and I recommend to everybody who's watching this that you've got to go and get online, and you'll find that there will be a link to it or something in a minute coming your way. The other thing, I guess, to both of you really, the other thing, we talk about about access for people who can't get there because of restrictions to do with COVID. But of course, there are people who can't get to galleries for other reasons. So that, I think that's one of the great things about the digital world. It can also open it up to others who wouldn't normally be unable to access those things. So so I think it's really good. And I don't know what you guys think, but I think that as we move forward into a kind of new world, really, because it is going to be a new world, I think a lot of creative activities are going to be far more blended in their offering, because I think, and tell me if I'm wrong, I think the producers, if you like, of creative stuff now realise that actually it's not impossible to be able to put things on digitally on virtual platforms, and if you can get the balance between that and actually walking in, seeing, touching something, I mean, that's got to be good. Is that the future, do you think?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I think that I can see with work as well that, when we go back to normal, everything will be blended. I think if you can get more people to engage, if that's digitally, then I think it's a really good idea going forward.
Yeah, no, I agree. So if we could just start to talk about the pictures, and Tracey, I'd like to ask you first. Your approach is very much a kind of documentary approach. But I'm always interested when people make pictures, how do they actually approach making pictures? How do you get the camera and go out and do stuff? So, when you go in, well, how do you do it? Do you plan around things in anticipation, or you're aware that something's going to happen and you make sure you're there to photograph it, or is it more spontaneous and you're reacting to things as they kind of happen in front of you in the world?
It's a bit of a two-pronged approach, I guess. So I documented the campaign to save the hospital. So obviously I knew in advance that there would be get-togethers and rallies, so I kind of knew what I was walking into. But for me, the whole point of being there was to document it, but to try and capture the feelings that were going on as well. So not just the anger, but also there was lots of laughter during these meetings as well. And people coming together from different backgrounds, because we were all under the same umbrella of wanting to save the hospital. But the stuff during lockdown is pretty much organic. It's just grabbing the camera. A lot of it was done, like Lucy said, in your hours daily exercise, out and about, and capturing things that may be mundane to some people. But it's a once in a lifetime. They won't be there again. Fingers crossed we'll never be in this situation again. So it's just documenting a period of history.
Yeah. So in a way, as you say, that there's two ways that you've looked at it. You've been sort of structured in planning and making sure that the sort of some of the key events are covered, but then there are other things which are more spontaneous. And yeah, I think it is important to capture a mix of things. As well, because as you say, if we come out of the if we get back to some sense of normality, which I can't imagine we will actually. Let's hope it isn't the old normal, which was not always as good either. But it is important that we have some records of that as well. I mean, in that sense, I mean, do you have one or two pictures that you feel really worked best for you and the way that you were approaching life in the Rhondda?
Well, my favourite picture is the girl on the horse. So that was completely off the cuff. That was me wandering around, trying to get my steps in for the day, and just came across this girl on her horse. And it just captures the emptiness. I mean, I think that was like a Wednesday afternoon on a main road. That should have been full of cars, but it was just her on a horse enjoying something so simple that she could ride in the middle of the road. And I just thought that's just a lovely capture. But then to go the other way with the structured is the picture of the doll's house outside the house with the Pentre flooding. So obviously I knew that the floods had happened, but I actually cried taking that photo. Walking down that street was horrendous. There was people's lives on the pavement. But yet we go back to resilience, neighbours helping neighbours, people were turning up from far and wide with food, people laughing and joking with each other. And I think it was important for me to capture that moment in time, and just try and capture the emotion and the resilience of it all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think the floods, it's a particularly tragic thing at the best of times, but then to have then again sort of repetitions of these things going on, and in this horrendous lockdown and so on. It really is it's quite extraordinary. And yeah, and I think I have to say the horse picture did catch my eye, because I think it's partly because I went. I had family living in Mardy, and I actually went to the school, which I think now was like the comprehensive school, and I kind of went there when it was first there. I was like in my 5th or 6th form, and I remember going in, So we knew that street quite well. And I think, if I'm right, if I remember, the picture is sort of kind of outside. Is it the Con Club?
You've got the Con, yeah, just further down. And
yeah, well, I used to bunk school to go into the Con to have a few drinks, which is great. But it sort of captured my imagination because I knew the place. But also, as you say, it's kind of strange because that really is the main road coming up that valley, going on through over to Adlais, and yet there's hardly, well, I don't think there are cars parked, but there's no cars going back and forth. And there's this horse and horse rider going through. So it is something which, again, I think it's a theme that you see not often, but you see it occasionally come up in photography in the valleys. And I think it is because we live in this really beautiful place where you can be living on a street, but then 20 yards away, you're on the mountainside, and you're into so people can keep horses and so on, which is tremendous. Okay, thank you. Lucy, it's a similar sort of question, really. I mean, your photography is very different. And I know you would say that primarily you're not a photographer, you're an artist. You kind of, it is a different thing. We won't start having a conversation about art and photography. Okay, let's not
start that debate.
No. We've had enough of that one. Read Keith Arnott, Sausages and Food. Anyway, no, everybody should actually. But it's the same thing that you're trying to capture something. But it's yours is based in a kind of realism, but it's but unlike Tracey's, where we can say, oh yeah, that's real, that is real. We look at your pictures and it's like, well, oh, okay, that's kind of real, but not quite, So, what's your approach? And again, have you got a couple of images that really give the best examples of what you were trying to achieve in this crazy time in this exhibition, of course?
Yeah. Well, I say a lot of my work is about mental health, but it's very sort of introspective. So with this body of work, because everyone was going through similar experiences like lockdown and saving the local hospital, these events they were felt everywhere in the Rhondda. And I thought, well, this is not about me, this is about everyone else. This is about this shared collective experience that we're all going through. So a lot of the images are about that, and that they're not directly pointing to, well, this is definitely about this situation or this feeling. I've left them untitled so that people can have their own interpretations. But there are one or two images that I hope that the narrative is a bit more clear, and it's picking up on Tracey's image as well, with the doll's house. I live in Pentra, and I'm a couple of streets away from where the flooding is. And over the past couple of months, I've heard the pumps on at night, and you wake up in the night and you think, oh gosh, has it flooded again? And so there's 3 images that are linked with the colour red, danger. And that's about the Pentra flooding, because there's cause and effect of these situations, and I feel personally that it's not been addressed properly. So that was my way of saying, come on now, this needs to get some focus, this needs to get some attention, and it needs to get remedied.
Yeah, but I think it's one of the things I found really striking about the exhibition is these different approaches, which is, I think it's a really interesting thing to kind of to go and look at, because then you are kind of encouraged, I think, to think about the photographs in a different way than you might if you just saw all of Tracey's pictures or just saw all of your pictures, because straight away you're trying to imagine what's in the minds of each of you individually, but then when you look at these pictures together, you start to think about, well, actually, you know, Tracey, to me anyway, Tracey's pictures is very much about what's going on the day-to-day life in this place with, you know, all the things that you've talked about in terms of the trauma, really, of trying. You know, you're going to close one of the most important hospitals, you know, in the area, for God's sake, you know, and the floods, of course. So there's that sort of day-to-day stuff. But then I think looking at your images, Lucy, it's like, well, how do those things make you feel? You know, it sort of really emphasizes that, you know, images are not just about what it looks like. It actually is about what it feels. And that crosses over. That's also in Tracey's. I mean, Tracey's, you also get the sense of feeling. But I think by having these two very distinct approaches, it really gets drawn out in a very particular way. Now, in light of that, I mean, one of the things that I found, again, quite interesting, because I kind of saw, as soon as you start looking at something, I start analysing it, you know, what's going on, the layout of the show there's a very particular layout. So if I remember rightly, we've got Tracey's pictures along the top, Lucy's pictures along the bottom, and actually they are kind of paired off. That's just how I looked at it. This is how I read it, and I don't know what I was expecting, perhaps. But when I thought, well, I know that these two people work in a very different way. So are they going to have sort of separate spaces? You know, but you've actually really decided that, no, these things go together. And then when you put things together, you do make choices, don't you, of what goes with each other. So how, I mean, I think I'm just interested to know how deliberate were some of those pairings or not, basically. Right, whoever wants to answer first.
Well, yeah, it was quite difficult, really, to sort of decide how to put things together, because we knew the narratives within our images and the feelings and the connotations. But, you know, for someone who's never seen those images before, they walk in with a completely different view of them, possibly. So it was quite tricky to pair them together. But Tracey's, I feel, had a very deliberate sequencing, and mine was more of a response to that. So Tracey's the one colour image, isn't it, Tracey? That's really important.
Yeah, so the one colour image that I submitted, I wanted on the end of all the black and white photos, and that was just to kind of act as an exclamation mark, just to show the positivity. So here's our reactions to like the negative stuff that has been happening, but our resilience and our optimism is shown in the colour photo of just the bunting that filled the whole valley. And it was beautiful, but that was very deliberate for me, yeah.
That's interesting. I mean, anybody who's put on an exhibition of their own work, again, just if they're just on their own, will know that it's always difficult to kind of, you know, get the sequencing right. When there's two of you, it is incredibly difficult, and it's interesting to hear that perhaps Tracey is sort of almost taking I say taking the lead. Don't get me wrong, but it's kind of laying down a kind of guide, if you like, then which gets responded to. And I think that's quite fascinating, because I mean the times I have worked with other people putting on sort of exhibitions where there is a number of you that actually there are some sort of tensions. There are some times where you disagree. And I mean, did you ever sort of shout at each other?
No.
Okay. Okay.
No, we laughed a lot, never shouted, no.
Okay. Yeah, no, it's interesting. And I think it's one of the things that, we're always encouraging people to try and show work. I mean, and get feedback. I mean, that's the great thing. And actually, it's only by working collaboratively that sometimes you really get the experience of really thinking very hard about your own stuff. So I'm always interested to know if there are little sort of scraps in there. Which. Okay. So very interesting exhibition, and I recommend that people get to see it in virtual, real, or whatever form you can. But you two never stop doing stuff. So what's on the horizon? What sort of new things have you been working on since then? Or it's still going, but what else are you doing?
Who wants to go first?
You go first.
Okay, thank you, Tracey. So I'm going to sort of carry on photographing in the Rhondda when the weather permits, because at the moment it's been terrible up here this week. I've got one or two little projects that I sort of stopped doing when lockdown hit, but I'll go back to them. So I've got Your Story, Your Words, responding to people's anonymous submissions where they post a word or a sentence, maybe a poem that they've written about their experience of mental health. But other than that, I'm just going to plod along when the weather permits, photographing around in the Rhondda because, as you say, what is the new normal? I think we just got to work around how things are.
Tracey, what about you?
So at the back end of last year, I made a conscious decision to document the Rhondda in 2020. I didn't realise that this would happen.
What a year to pick.
Yeah, I know. So obviously finish the rest of the year. But in an ideal world, I'd like to put together some kind of photo book with the work. So I've got like a physical copy of something. So that's probably going to be a project for the new year. And also Lucy and I have got a lot of stuff in the pipeline with spin-offs from the exhibition at the moment that we're just trying to plan and see how we can work things safely. But yeah, that'll be really exciting.
Yeah. So what sort of things are coming out of it then, out of the exhibition? As in, what are those spin-outs?
We both volunteer with the Rhondda Creative Community Group, and it was last year now, wasn't it? Tracey was documenting Gail from the Workers taking the David Hearn exhibition out on tour to community venues for people that couldn't access the gallery. So we're hoping, fingers crossed, to do something similar, and we're going to be taking this exhibition out into community venues, hopefully starting with St Anne's in Ynyshir. And we're hoping also to do a projected exhibition of entries from the photo competition we've been running as sort of a celebration of the Rhondda, because like I said, everyone's been going out walking a lot more and going out and about in the Rhondda and finding new places and photographing it. So we thought we'll celebrate other people using photography for their well-being and do something with that. Yeah.
And the response has been massive. We've been so overwhelmed by how many people have engaged with us with their submissions. It's been crazy.
I mean, I have seen some of the stuff on social media, actually, and I mean, it is incredibly impressive. And, I think one of the fantastic things about what you've done there is that people, are they anyway? People are not afraid to share their pictures. They make great pictures and they just share them and they talk about them and they enjoy each other's pictures, and I think that's again one of those really good things that have come out of all the sort of hardships, if you like, of the last few months, is that people are finding ways of connecting with their community. Now, I mean, I live down here in Adlais, and I mean, for years, I mean, I didn't know anybody down here. You know what I mean? You know, I'd be working or I'd be doing stuff. I know one or two people, but now I know everybody because I'm out walking. You know, it's like you're saying, we don't getting our exercise and everything else, and you stop at a socially safe, you know, distance, and you chat. And there are these things where you start chatting and you realise that people do things and you have things in common. And I think what you've done there with that community photography project is you've kind of allowed people to kind of really share on a platform. And I mean, how many people have been involved, do you think, roughly?
It's over 100. It's well over 100 now.
And I mean, because I'm not the most digitally literate person in the world, but how is that on what, Instagram or?
We've got an Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook account, but we're mostly active on Facebook at the moment. People are finding that is the easiest platform to submit and share their pictures.
Yeah, and what about with that sort of work in the same way with your own exhibition? You've gone through that very careful process of not just taking images, making images, but actually selecting and then thinking about how they go together. I mean, is that starting to happen with the community group? Are they starting to think about where it goes, or is that the next step that you take, or what?
It might be the next step we take. We've started compiling all of the entries together to put them, you know, in a sort of sequence to be projected onto community venue. And that, sequencing that, was it 24 images in the exhibition, and now we're sequencing over 100. So it's interesting. It is a lot of fun.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it is interesting, and it's you know, and it's the same in a way. It's the same challenges whether there's 100 people or whether there's 2 people. It's the same. You know, what are they trying to say? And I think that's hopefully what is really nice about what you guys are doing and what's coming out of the Workers' Gallery is that, you know, photography is, everybody does photography. And I think it's really good that people really do start to think about some of the nuances. You guys know about it, the editing and how you can communicate an idea through images. And it's nice that people can start to kind of engage with that and be able to do those things in a way that makes sense for them as well. Because, you know, it's a good thing. And our lives are controlled by images. And the quicker we understand how to read them and be careful about them, then that's good. Well, okay. I mean, well, what a lovely conversation we've had. And I'd just like to thank both of you. Thank you, Tracey.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lucy.
Thank you.
And I wish you all the very best with your ongoing projects, and look forward to seeing you again in the real sometime soon. Okay, take care.
Bye.
Bye.